And that is also why it's so important, I think, to understand this hierarchy of race that was constructed, because it's ultimately the closer in proximity to white male that you can get, the more societal privileges you have, right? So it is a
Yeah.
spectrum, and that's why it's like, and then when you think about even our white ancestors, like, of course, if they can pass, they're going to pass because it means jobs and opportunity. So on one hand, you can't blame them, but okay, here we are having a
Yep.
conversation about this. And to your point, well, what does moving on really look like then? And it's
Mhm.
not moving. And that's also what's silly, because I feel like oftentimes when people say that, they're very much seeing that racism is a thing of the past and that
Mm.
racism happens between individuals. And if we
Right.
all just are nice, then we should be able to move on. And it's like, no, we're talking
Yes.
about hundreds of years of systemic oppression. And if we're
Yes.
going to continue to say we need to move on, that's in the past, we are actually moving on because we aren't exposing it. Like
Right.
part of healing too is exposing within us what needs to be healed so it may be metabolized and we may be healed. So
Yes.
if in the healer space, if we can see things like racism as something that needs to be exposed so that it is healed, it's the same thing to me. It's very hard for me to
Exactly.
see them as different.
Exactly. And anybody who is having a hard time conceptualizing this, I want people to think about this. We thought for so long that like the difference, the disparity between genders was coming to a close. Like we were like patting ourselves on the back that like women were able to be the bad boss bitches, right? At the same time that they were able to be moms, at the same time, this whole idea of like you can have it all in various
Hmm.
forms was there, right? We were getting better with pay gaps and things, obviously still work to be done, but like things were moving on. And then in 2023, we had the Supreme Court go and say, women's bodies.
Yeah, psych.
We're gonna dictate to you in many states across the country. We're gonna take away your ability to have reproductive rights of your own and be able to choose for yourself what that looks like. That is misogyny at its prime. I don't think that we can truly say that when you just move on and quote make progress, that there aren't people who are out there who are trying to subvert progress. In
Yes.
this case, it literally took 9 people. That's it.
Yeah. That is
Nine
such a perfect
people.
example. And here we are.
So right. So I hope that people will take that as in consideration when we are talking about something as inflammatory to many as race and what that
Hmm.
looks like in a variety of spaces. And you guys think about this. Bree and I are talking about within the healer practitioner space. Simply having people of color be taken out of the shadows and put onto platforms. We're not talking about in the boardroom. We're not
Right.
talking about in the presidency. We're not like got thoughts on that too, but we're
Yes.
simply talking about it from in this perspective, and a place where, in my opinion, it should be so much easier. This should be the place where we can learn from. We can be the example
Absolutely.
that the rest of the world learns from.
Absolutely. And see, this is the other thing I want to like pick your brain with, because in the healer space, there's a lot of conversation about manifestation, right? Like that's just this. And honestly, what I would call it now is just another form of white supremacy, capitalistic, like ideals wrapped up in a manifestation bow, right? And so if we really do believe, like if we really do believe that, which I do, I believe in the laws of the universe. I do believe that our thoughts are and our minds are incredibly powerful to manifest our greatest desires. So if that were true, then why haven't we manifested more equity? Why haven't we
Girl,
manifested more peace?
girl, That is such a great point. And I honestly don't think that I have any real good like answer around it. And I think, but I do think that so I'm gonna say this, and then I want to hear your thought on your feeling about it. There are so many of us who have been in the shadows for so long, or who have bloodlines that have been in the shadows for so long, that we don't know any other way to
Hmm.
be. And it's feeling when you know how to do it. Like I would liken it to,
Yeah.
you can only make money if you know how to make it. And there's a variety of ways to make it, just like there are a variety of ways to manifest.
Yeah.
You can go to a 9 to 5, 5 days a week, right? You can invest, you can have inheritance. Um, all of those, yeah, I'm sure there's others, but those are like the big three that when I think about like how do I make money, those are the ways. I don't
Yeah.
have any rich relatives to my knowledge, so I won't be inheriting anything. And
Ditto.
I have I've put a little bit of money into investment, but I will be very honest, I don't have nobody sat down and taught me, and nor have I um gone and paid somebody to teach me how to invest in a way where my money works for me. So what does that
Yeah.
leave me with? That leaves me with going to a job, to working. And and to be honest, that is the slower form of making money,
Yeah.
because taxes come out and all that stuff. Manifestation, I think, is the same thing. There are multiple ways to manifest. There's a fast way and there's a slow way. And I think a lot of people manifest in the slow way. And in the slow way would be like daily affirmations. Um, it would be like uh sitting and doing breath work. Like when you are manifesting, say the love of your life, right? And you're like, okay, number one, I'm going to say to myself every morning in the mirror that I am worthy of love and that I love myself. And then you journal about how the perfect person is going to come to you. That's the
Mhm.
slow way of manifestation, I feel like, right? That law of attraction, putting out good and hoping good comes to you.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a faster way, similar to how like you can have your energy work for you, but that takes the skill of going up into the quantum. So we're talking about astral projection. We're talking about working inside of your DNA and working at the level of energy and understanding things
Yeah.
like the breath of life and understanding how oxygen can fuel your frequency up, so that you, when you are doing those things like affirmations and whatever, that it works at a much faster rate, but then also doing that meditation work, right? Going up into these much higher levels of frequency and working in that area along the lines of your DNA and your belief system and the
Yeah.
stories that are living inside of you, right? Undoing that. And I think that's a level of manifestation that a lot of people don't know. Nobody's writing a book about that. I'll
Yeah.
guarantee that. Nobody's I'm not even thinking about writing a book about that. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
But but it's a real easy to write a book about. If you think good things will happen to you. It's a
Yeah.
really easy book to write. Um, and I don't mean to make writing sound easy. It's not. But in the, when we're looking at
I
those
get what you're
two things,
saying. Yeah.
right? So, I mean, what are your thoughts? Why do you think
Yeah.
that we haven't manifested more peace and love and equity?
Yeah, I really love your perspective. And so I'm only going to add to that. And I love this dialogue because I want to have more conversations about this so that I can be more comfortable with my understanding of it. But I think it's multifaceted. So on one hand, I feel like you made a point around in this 3D reality, there is not equity. So like some of us don't have the same skills, hard tangible skills or even have access to that. So there is inherently privilege in one's ability to make money in this 3D reality. And I think of some of the really like well-known manifesting coaches out there, majority of them are white women, and even they have histories of immigration struggles and things like that. But again, there still is not, I don't think, enough recognition to understand how their white skin privileges them in a capitalistic society. So there's that whole dialogue to be had around privilege. Also, though, that leads to, I do believe that our human minds, our spiritual minds even, are incredibly powerful, and that we can, no matter who we are, manifest our greatest desires. I believe that. And I believe, though, that when we live in a system that indoctrinates us into this hierarchy of who is worthy and who is not, that we can't deny that that has an impact on us. And in order for us to transcend that, we have to recognize that that oppression is in place. We have to recognize that dark entity so that we may free it, you know?
You
So
bring
I
up a
think,
good point.
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, no, sorry. Do you want to say something on that?
I,
Or,
well, it's more of another question. So please finish your thought, and
oh,
then I
okay.
want to ask a question
Yeah, yeah.
around what you just said.
Okay. And so then the other aspect of this conversation is, if we have if one's understanding of their power as a spirit and a human body, if one's understanding of the limitless nature of their soul um is limited in our 3D reality to those who have access to privilege and power, and who have no understanding or willingness to understand the dark entities within our 3D reality that further perpetuate racism and oppression, then of course we're not going to manifest peace. Of course we're not going to manifest abundance outside of a hierarchy, because we can't even imagine actually what it is we are going to. And in manifestation, the key is understanding what it feels like, or looks like, what it is. We have to understand that in order to manifest it, to call it in. And we can't possibly get to that point because we aren't recognizing it. And we, as in the majority of those in the manifestation world and the healer world, white women, you know? So that,
Yes.
I feel like, is why we haven't.
And that's such a great point too, because it's similar to what I was saying, what we were saying about like neither of us have invested because nobody like taught us how to do it, but also like and in that, you know, it why would we even go to learn when we can't, when we have to fully like see ourselves in this position of millionaire, billionaire, right? Like it's an interesting,
Yeah.
it's an interesting place to find ourselves, right? And it the question that I wanted to ask you was similar in this vein, and it may be the same. You may feel like it's the answer you just gave, that um what do I want to say? Let me preface it like this. One of the places that I really truly want to be able to go and do some work, like to teach, is a gathering in Sedona called the is it the Summit of Shamans or the Shaman Summit? It's something like that. I
Okay.
apologize to whoever, if anybody from there happens
You
to
can put it
listen
in
to
the
this,
call or the
but
notes.
yes,
The
I'll
podcast
put it in the
notes.
show notes. It's great. It has like the Ruiz family, you know, the people
Yeah.
who wrote the Four Agreements books, um, Mastery of Self, and all of that. They go there. Um, what's her name? She wrote the books, the Warrior Goddess books, Ashamara,
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe she goes there. Um, but really, like in the whole reason why I want to go there is because when I look at the poster, right?
Woo.
The practitioners, the people who are speaking there, are of color. I mean, it's not that they don't have white people who are practitioners, who are healers, who are there at this summit, but the Gathering of Shamans, that was it. I knew if I talked long enough, it would come to me. It's called the Gathering of Shamans.
Okay.
And it's open for everybody to be able to go and experience it, but I want to teach there.
Yeah.
And I've looked to see, like, can I submit my name to be able to go and teach there? And I can't find anything. It's like an invitation only to be able
Interesting.
to speak and to teach there. And so my question for you is, when we're thinking about like getting into places with more equity, right? Do you think that the spaces that are available are kept too close? Like it's not this kind of like free for all of like, hey, if you're a person of color, come, we'd love for you to have even 10 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a type of an elitism there, out of fear, out of I don't
Yeah.
know, out of doubt, out of a feeling of like there aren't that many of us, so the ones that we've got here are the ones that exist? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
That is such a good question. And to be honest, I haven't put a lot of thought into that specific, but I feel like there are a couple things at play. I think one is, and this can get us into an even more in-depth conversation, maybe for another day, around appreciation versus appropriation. But I do feel like in our society today that there are a lot of people that want to get in on this shamanism thing as if it's like the new Lisa Frank, or that's probably not the best example, but that's the first thing that came to me, you know? But it's like,
But yeah.
so it's like there is I think that there needs to be a protection of the sacredness of shamanism. And also, I think that what I see humans often doing is this pendulum shift, right? So it's like, so we're going to go from, oh, we got to really protect this, to only a few selected. And what happens in a 3D reality where there is a hierarchy of race and class and gender, we end up excluding powerful medicine women, powerful medicine, and powerful people with brilliant medicine and healing capabilities that would actually further enhance the whatever it is these people are holding, tightly. So I think, to answer your question, absolutely. And I think it's largely because what we're talking about here is something that has been monetized, and has been um, hijacked by capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy. So even if you are a healer and you are operating in this culture, and particularly if you refuse to acknowledge it, then of course you're going to continue perpetuating it, even if you have good intentions. So
Yes.
I don't know a lot about that specific example that you're sharing, but that's what comes to mind, is like there is this level of elitist. And I understand that perhaps it started with this desire to protect something sacred.
Mm,
Um, and so I don't, yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on it, but I feel like that could be a whole nother conversation. Um, and I just think about it as like, as a imperfect human myself, um, I often see that with more money and with more exposure, it clouds our ability to see clearly.
yeah.
And it's not to say that money is bad, because I feel like I don't believe that. I don't believe that
Mm,
money is evil. I believe that that it is abundant, and we live in a society that likes us to think that that we live in a scarcity mindset around money. So I'm not saying that at all. And I'm also saying that I think we can easily forget our humanness, and that's when we cause harm.
What would you say to a practitioner of any kind, whether it's in the spiritual space or the non-spiritual space? Like I'm thinking about things
Mhm.
like therapy
Yeah.
or whatever, people coaching who are finding themselves wanting to increase their diversity, that they're in their inclusion in whatever space that they're in. So let's say it's a person wanting to, like, who has a business who wants to bring in more people of color as practitioners, or a corporate space, you want to bring people of in all of the different roles, more
Mhm.
diversity, more equity there. What would you say is the first thing that has to be done to really get that ball rolling, so that a year from the day they decide that they're going to have a much different look from their, picture, whether it's the family practitioners standing
Right.
outside celebrating their the next year of being in business, or the corporate wall of CEOs. What is the first thing that has to be in place outside of acknowledging that they have a lack of it? Because I feel like
Yeah.
that absolutely has to be a thing. That goes without saying. If you're telling yourself you already have enough diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're probably wrong. so
Right.
so let's say, like, that obviously is that box has been check marked. What is the next thing that somebody has to do in order to bring more equity and more diversity into their space?
That's such a good question. And honestly, my answer has changed over the last few years. So I want to start with, oftentimes, again, when I've become very present with the culture, and the mindset of our culture that's rooted in white supremacy and patriarchy. So one of the things that I like to say, to caveat my answer, is that, like, we often want to focus on the doing rather than the being, and then so there's many people doing from a place of disembodiment. Um,
Ah,
and so to me, it's all about the being and not the doing. So honestly, and I'm not saying this as a cop out, okay? Like, I'm saying this as, like, this is work. This is hard work, is to really go deep within oneself
mm,
and begin, um integrate a spiritual practice of decolonizing your mind, your spirit, your work. So it's not even doing it as the first step. It's really focusing on the being. So awareness, yes, first tick awareness. Ooh, I probably should do something about that. Second is, get very comfortable with being uncomfortable, but get very comfortable with understanding what it is you are actually trying to create. Like,
gotcha.
because
Oh, and
because
that's a
when
good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can't define that until you begin your own healing journey and
Mm,
heal yourself of white supremacy. Heal yourself. And I don't like to say heal yourself, because, like, I don't think it's a check the box. Like, I think that there's, and I
right.
also don't want to say that, oh, I always have to heal, like, like perpetual healing, because I'm not saying that either, but I'm
Mhm.
like, it's really just an awareness, it's a practice, it's a ritual.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as any healer knows, is you don't just do it one day and you're healed. You do it every
Right.
day because it's spiritual hygiene. Well, there's also, like, I don't know what I would call it, but part of one's spiritual hygiene should be them creating a ritual of, to where their muscles, their spiritual and their brain muscles, actually naturally see things for what they are and are constantly weaving and evolving, um and transforming the way they be in the world, that helps contribute to more equity and justice and inclusion. Because one person who says, well, I need more diverse clients, all right, let's dig a little bit deeper. Why?
Right.
And if your answer is because it's the right thing to do, you ain't done yet. You know what I mean? Because it's really, well, why? What am I what am I missing out on? What is the collective missing out on when all I serve are X, X identity?
Right.
Um,
Right.
because diversity isn't always the answer. And I think that's the other thing.
We have to have another conversation. We do. We
Okay.
have to, because I'm sure that everybody is like, I mean, this is already going to be as a two-parter. So if you have reached this far, you have either realized that there was a first part to this, or
To
you
be
need to go
continued.
back. Yeah. But we definitely haven't have another conversation, because I know that just by saying that, people are like, wait a second,
Wait,
what
what?
the fuck? Hold the phone. You're telling me that if I am a white person with a business with a lot of white clients, with a lot of white practitioners, whatever it is, or like people in, whatever roles it is, you're telling me that I may not have a diversity issue or an equity issue? Hold on, wait, I want to know more about this, because I think that's exactly where people are going to go. And I already know that that's not what you were saying, but I
No.
think that the idea that people tend to take things into extremes, and they tend to
Yep.
not understand. And obviously, one of the hardest things about this conversation too, and by this conversation I don't just mean the one that you and I are having, but just the umbrella term of the conversation of diversity, equity, inclusion, of dismantling racism and patriarchy and all of that stuff, and really getting to a place where we're all benefiting, instead of having
Mhm.
a large portion of any society failing utterly because they just don't have the tools, they don't have the means, they don't have the opportunities, whatever it is understanding that it's not a one size fits all, and that
Yeah.
even by me asking the question of like, what is the first step, is kind of a trick question, right? Because
Hmm.
like you were saying, you know what, you might find yourself as a person listening to this saying, well, I've asked myself that question. I've done the deep digging. I realized that in my life I do not have a great number of friends. So what did I do? I went and I put myself in places where I would be exposed
Hmm.
to people of color. And I have been doing that consistently, and I've been making friends and all of that. And now, what now I'm asking myself this question of like, how do I bring these people into my business or whatever? And I don't know how, so we
Yeah.
absolutely have to have another conversation, because there's just so much to unpack. We could take this everywhere. Um, Thank you so much for being
Yes.
here. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can work with you, where they can follow you, all the good things?
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I look forward to a part two. So Bryana Clover, at Bryana Clover is my Instagram handle, Bryana, and Clover like the four-leaf clover. And my website's the same, www.bryanaclover.com. I'm in the process of transitioning and really fine-tuning some more offers for folks to get tapped into. So would love folks to come that way and just get to know me in my space. I'm speaking my mind more on that platform, and so I'm excited for those who are fired up about this dialogue that we had to come on over for more of that kind of conversation. So thank
Yay.
you so much.
Absolutely. Guys, this is not the last time that you're going to be seeing Brianna here. I have if you've been with me, you know that a lot of things have been changing lately, but it has been a grave, grave misstep on my part to not have her sooner. And we will
Oh,
remedy this 100%. You will be seeing her all over, because I think that Brianna, you're such a light, your knowledge around, and they can go everywhere, and you have such a beautiful way of expressing yourself, and I'm just so I
thank you.
will be forever grateful that we were brought together, and that we can call each other friends, and I'm just so happy that you were able to come and do this with me today. You guys,
Thank you.
this has
Thank you.
been just, of course, my love. This has been an extraordinary conversation. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this with anyone that you feel like needs this conversation. It is an important one to have, and we are not done. So you guys definitely make sure to check out all of the conversations, all of the parts of this. Check out the show notes to find all of the different ways to work and to follow and to be inside of Bree's world. And we will see you next time on the next Breath of Life Conversations. Bye, everybody.